Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm David Petrayko from the Nautical Institute, and welcome to our webinar today on the Maritime Labour Convention. I'm joined here, I'm speaking from my home in London, but I'm joined here by Pankaj Kapoor, Captain Kapoor, from his home in Mumbai. Good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon to you.
Thank you. Before we start, just a few notes. I hope everybody's familiar with the Nautical Institute. We are an international professional body, and our main role is to help our members develop themselves professionally. We do that by sharing ideas, and we also represent our members' thoughts and feelings at international forum, such as the IMO, IALA, etc., etc. Why do we do this? We believe that people who think of themselves and act professionally, and that's by taking an interest in what they do, continuous professional development, lifelong learning, we think they make better decisions. And that's what we do. We try to help people make better decisions. Now, that might be about safety, it might be commercial operations, it might be about their own career choices, whatever, but we like to help people make better decisions. Now, the Maritime Labour Convention is an incredibly important piece of work for the maritime professionals, and it is very important to understand it and to implement it correctly. So we are very pleased that Captain Kapoor from Mumbai is here to help us through it. But before we start, just a few housekeeping notes. This is an interactive session. Your cameras and microphones are disabled, but you are able to type in and send us questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. You have a control panel in the upper right hand of your screen. You have a little white arrow in an orange field that expands and contracts. When the control panel is expanded, you have a number of options, including one where you can ask a question, but when you type the question, you must press the send button. Now, there are a lot of people here, so if you can make your questions as clear and succinct as possible, it will help me deal with them. There are also a number of handouts. Now, I've looked at the slides. The slides are very good, but there's a lot of information in them. So all the slides are available as a handout, so feel free to download it, and all that information will be yours. Right. Now, afterwards, when I end the webinar, you will be invited to do a very short survey asking how we do, what can we do better, and if you can fill that in, it only takes a couple minutes. It'll help us improve our operation. There will also be about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours after the webinar ends, you will get an email thanking you for your attendance, and in that thank you email will be a link to a certificate that is customized for you with your name on it. But please be patient, allow a couple hours before you get that. A recording of this webinar will also be made available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search on the Nautical Institute, you'll see our channel. The recording will hopefully be available by tomorrow, and there'll be recordings of all our other webinars for your perusal as well. Now, you are not alone. There are a lot of people interested in this subject. So as I said, please, when you write in with a question, be as succinct as possible so that we can deal with it as effectively as possible. So now, the start of the main event. Captain Kapoor has a command in a wide range of different vessels. He's been a ex-member of Planning Commission, helping advise the government of India. He is a senior partner of maritime law at Indian law offices. He is a member of the legal committee of the Company of Master Mariners in India, and he has done a wide range of lecturing in his career. If you would like more information about Captain Kapoor, there's a slight CV also on the handouts that you can download for more information. So, Captain Kapoor, let me just hand over control to you, sir. You should now have the con.
All right, thank you. Thank you, David. Good morning to everybody who is from the West. Good afternoon to people around the Indian subcontinent, and a late good afternoon to people from the West and from the Far East. I'll take a moment before we start to thank all the seafarers who have done a remarkable job in this COVID times. It's uncomparable. One cannot compare the sacrifices which they and their families have made to keep the world supply lines running. And of course, we must not forget to thank the governments and their various organizations who have taken a lot of efforts to bring the sailors back home and those who are home to put them on the ship. Not forgetting the contributions of the companies, the shipping companies, the management companies who have made special efforts, worked. I've personally seen that they have worked overtime to bring the people home. The trade unions, and finally, last but not least, IMO, ILO, ICS, and ITF, who have jointly, very recently, made a presentation to the UNO to declare all the seafarers as key workers. With that, I'll start with today's presentation. I will start with a couple of cases which occurred before MLC came, just to give you a fair idea of what happens if when MLC was not there. This is a ship called Obo Basak. The year of incidence was 1997. It's all this information is available online. The ship owner was Marty Shipping from Turkey. What really happened on that ship was the ship was arrested in the French port of Dunkirk in the year July 1997. MLC came around 2013, so this was before MLC, July 1997, by virtue of a joint action filed by the creditors of Marty Shipping. There were some people who had some money due from the shipping, so they arrested the vessel. But unfortunately, the effect of the arrest always is on the sailors, on the seafarers, on the crew members who work on the ship. 31 crew members were not paid for nearly 9 months. There was no food, no fuel. Ship's crew had a problem. They had nothing else but to approach the French television as a last resort, seeking help from the local community. I go on to another vessel. This was in 2009. Remember, MLC came in force in 2013, so this was before MLC came into force. Name of the vessel, Stalingrad. Owners of the ship, Sakhalin Amur Trans. Facts of the case, once again, vessel arrested by the creditors, unpaid crew wages for more than 4 months, with no provisions, water, fuel, heating, cooking, while the ship was left stranded in the port of Liverpool in England. Now, what was even more reprehensible was that the owner was attempting or trying to convince the crew to sail from there without making any payments or without guaranteeing anything to the crew. Now, the reason is of bringing these two ships is let us superimpose these two scenarios of what could have happened after MLC came into force. After MLC came into force, the crew members on both the vessels were given rights by the domestic laws, because it became an international law and then ratified by a lot of countries. By virtue of the domestic laws, they had the right to approach the MLC insurance company to claim for their wages, which was not available to them prior MLC. So this financial security which they got after MLC came into force was one of the largest and the most remarkable impact which MLC had on the working conditions of the crew. And that, by the way, is also the topic of our today's presentation, Impact of Maritime Labor Convention. We go on to the next slide. Now, seafaring is considered as one of the oldest professions, and we know that is the oldest profession. And There was always a quest of the people to go beyond the horizons. But in those days, it had a lot of limitations, isolation, and danger. Practically, what occurred on the ship was what the captain wanted, and it's very commonly known as the captain's law, which prevailed on the ship. In one of the very famous cases in those times was the case of a ship called Minerva in 1825, when the sitting judge, Lord Stowell, passed a statement, gave a remark in one of the cases of this ship called Minerva, that it is on one side are the gentlemen possessed with wealth, that means the ship owners, and on the other side is a set of men, that is the crew, who are generally very ignorant and very illiterate. It was in 1825. Verbally reckless, ill provided with any means of obtaining useful information. In those days, ships used to be out to sea for months together. It was not possible to get any information. And the crew members at that time were always ready to sign on any instrument that may be proposed to them. What was remarkable in Lord Stowell's statement was that it is very important that in all accounts, the seafarers require protection even against themselves, because they were so illiterate at those times, unaware of what their rights were. Now, in this case, what really happened in Minerva was the crew signed an agreement, or the articles which we used to call article, which says that the vessel can visit to New South Wales and India and return back to the port. This was visibly written on the article, signed by the seamen. Later on close inspection, it was found that the words "or elsewhere" were very obscure and written in a very small words. They were very obscure. That means the vessel could be taken to New South Wales, India, or elsewhere. This was not very clear. And that is the reason why Lord Stowell, in his judgment of the vessel, the Minerva, said that the ship's crew was so innocent and ignorant that they were willing to sign any instrument which was proposed to them. Now we go on to the humane treatment. We all know MLC demands that. Humane treatment of seafarers has for a long been a very standing issue. And a lot of work has gone into them since 1920. ILO has come out with various guidelines, directions, finally merging all of them. Close to 70 guidelines, resolutions, acts were merged into MLC, which finally came into existence in the year 2006. Now, people agree, everybody accepts that there are 4 pillars to international maritime industry. One is MARPOL, the other one is STCW Convention, MLC is one of them. So it's mentioned at the bottom that arguably this is the single most important and wide-ranging convention of the recent times, and it aims to achieve standardization of seafarers' rights, bringing together for the first time a consolidation of close to 70 or so conventions which were in existence since 1920. All those were brought together. In case if any of the audience is interested in which all regulations were revised when MLC came into existence, it is mentioned under Article 10 of 2000 and MLC 2006. It gives a full list of close to 2025, which were repealed, consolidated into MLC. Article 10 very clearly gives the full list. Maritime Labour Convention has 2 primary purposes. The first one is to create a standard working condition for the seafarers. There were always some ship owners who were very much interested in looking after the crew, but they found themselves at a disadvantage to those who didn't want to give those kind of facilities to the crew. But MLC, by creating a standard format, has compelled everybody to follow MLC, and thus providing a level playing field for everybody and a fair competition. So it is also, like I have already mentioned, it is also known as the 4th pillar of international maritime regime, the other 3 being SOLAS, MARPOL, and STCW. The next one is under MLC, there are various guidelines to protect a sailor, or the minimum age of a seafarer is now very categorically mentioned. It's 16. You cannot employ a person who is below 16. And MLC also goes on to say that people who are below 18 should not be given a certain kind of work. They should not be made to work in dark hours and night, unless, of course, the work is such which is going to assist them in their training. So only under special circumstances can a person below 18 be asked to work during dark hours. Then it also now very categorically gives the duration of contracts. By the way, MLC does not particularly specify the number of months which the contract should be, but it does go on to say that a person working on the ship must be relieved before he completes 12 months of sailing on board. The purpose of bringing such a regulation was that there are a lot of companies who provide permanent contracts, permanent employment. So when you provide permanent employment, obviously you cannot give a figure or a duration of a contract. So MLC is very flexible there. They have left it to the member states to negotiate with the unions, to negotiate with the ship owners, and come to a figure about what should be the duration of the contract. So that is a beauty of MLC, that it is, though harsh or very strict on enforcement, but it is also flexible in order to implement MLC. Recently, after the amendment, they have also provided for compensation in the event of death or disability. Type and size of accommodation. Now, accommodation has become a very important part. In fact, there is an amendment which is expected to come in force somewhere around end of December 2020, where they have specified that the actual size and the number of persons which can be put into for a singular accommodation space. That's going to probably come into force in December 20. Various social securities which should be provided during the period of a contract. Now, when we talk about social security, family welfare, health welfare, the facilities which should be provided on board, the social security which should be provided when a person is ashore after he has completed his period of contract, then the rights of seafarers under a contract. Now, despite the good intentions of all to ensure timely relief of seafarers, point B, which is the duration of contract, above has come under a little strain presently due to COVID. I thought it important to mention this because it's a tough time for the seafarers, and that was my opening remark too, that everybody is indebted, and in fact the entire world is indebted to the seafarers for the remarkable job that they are doing. I recollect that the Secretary, the previous Secretary General of IMO once remarked that 90% of the world trade is done by shipping, and if shipping stopped, half the world would starve to death, and the other half will not get anything. They will die of hunger, or there will be no supply chain. So that is the kind of importance which the seafarers are providing to the entire global supply chain, and they have in fact added on to that in these COVID times. The entire world is indebted to them. Now, going ahead with this impact, MLC provides that all SEA is Seafarer Employment or Seamen's Employment Agreement, must have the following minimum information mentioned on each of the agreement. This, by the way, prior MLC was not a mandatory thing. Now, with the coming in of MLC, all this has to be mentioned, either on the contract or by reference to the collective bargaining agreement. So what all, I'll quickly go through the requirements. It's a full name, date, place of birth, age. Age is very important now, as we have already spoken about it. Ship owner's name, address, the capacity in which a seafarer is to be employed. You can't say he's going as a second year and send him on board as a third year. You cannot. It's not allowed anymore. The amount of seafarers' wages, that has to be very clearly mentioned. And by the way, I did mention that an amendment is coming by the end of this year, which now also says that if a seafarer is held back by armed robbers or pirates, then the seafarer's employment agreement continues to exist. That means the wages which were guaranteed under the employment agreement will continue even during the period period when the seafarer is held back by the pirates or held back by the armed robbers. The last one is any other particulars which the national law may require. The MLC is very flexible on that. It allows you to go beyond MLC and provide some more facilities if you wish to your seafarers. Now here, one of the most remarkable features of MLC, which has had a very powerful impact, is the financial security. Now what we mean by financial security is that if a ship owner abandons you, now what is the definition of abandonment? It is given under section 2.5(2), that a ship owner fails to cover the cost of seafarers' repatriation, has left the seafarer without necessary maintenance, or has otherwise unilaterally severed their ties with the seafarer, including failure to pay any contractual wages for a period of at least 2 months. I would like to highlight this part here. And I've come across a lot of cases where seafarers feel that if they stay on ship, their wages are guaranteed. And the moment they leave the ship, it is difficult to recover their wages. No, it is not. It is not so. You can recover the wages even after you leave the ship. So as soon as time passes where you have not been paid for more than 2 months, automatically under law, it is declared that the ship owner has abandoned you, and you have full rights as a seafarer to approach the insurance company which has given you your MLC insurance. You do not have to inform anyone. You have the legal right to approach the MLC insurance company and claim for your wages. This is one of the most remarkable features of MLC. But you have to be very, very sure that your MLC insurance is still alive. Just for the information of all the audience, normally all the insurances on the ship, except hull and machinery, all the other insurances on the ship expire on 20th of February of the next year. So please, if your wages have not been paid for 2 months, please approach the MLC insurance company and claim for your wages. Provide and do that before 20th of February, because the insurance expires, the insurance company is not going to cover you anymore. Another amendment which has come very recently and has come in force in 2019 is harassment and bullying. You cannot harass and bully the people on board just because you're a senior person, and you cannot harass and bully anybody on the ship. Two very important cases which have been recently highlighted is one where a Swedish lady, a lady seafarer, had pressed criminal charges against a senior officer who had sexually harassed her on board. The senior officer was subsequently found guilty and ordered to pay damages by the court in the northern Swedish town of Luleå. Another one which has happened very recently is the case of Tomini Destiny, the bulk carrier, which was off Bangladesh. The master and the crew said that because of COVID, nobody is checking the people who are coming on board. So we are all endangered, and we are in danger of getting this COVID thing. They force the employers to make sure that everybody who comes on board is tested for COVID. So the ship's crew called it harassment and bullying by the ship owner under this thing which has come into force in 2019. There are some case studies which I was personally involved. I'll quickly go through them because of shortage of time. There was a ship in Dubai anchorage. People had not been paid for 9 months. Owner asked them to come to Mumbai, drop anchor there. After 15 days, I was called by the master that they have still not been paid, but now the owner wants them to go to a demolition yard in a city called Alang in India, and he promised that they will be paid out of the proceeds from the demolition of the vessel. Please understand that in case you wish to recover your wages from a ship where you have worked, the ship herself has to exist. If the ship does not exist, you cannot recover. So I had to warn the master that please don't do that. Till the ship is alive, your right of claiming wages from the ship is still alive. So don't go there. Don't go to the demolition yard so that the ship itself disappears. The next one is there are some statistics which are available. The statistics are pretty clear that seafarers, and IMO has been regularly insisting that success of any law which they bring in, like MLC, is as much responsibility of the seafarer as it is of the government. Because if a seafarer is not aware of his own rights, then nobody can help him. A simple example that there are regulations that you must wear a helmet while you're driving a motorcycle. And if you say that, and if you don't wear a helmet and get injured, you cannot claim that I was not aware of the right. You have to be aware of a right in order to get the benefits of those rights. So IMO has repeatedly said that seafarers are ultimately responsible for implementing many of the IMO's measures, which includes MLC. There are certain statistics. I will quickly rush through them. They show that as of 31st December 2019, there were 366 abandonment incidents listed in the database of IMO, which was established since 2004, affecting to 4,866 seafarers. Out of those incidents, 175 cases have been resolved, 77 cases are still disputed, 52 cases are yet inactive, but around 52 are unresolved also. And from 2011 to 2019, the number of cases have ranged between 12 to 19. And as per IMO database of 2019, 474 seafarers on 40 ships have been abandoned. Once again, please be aware of your rights under MLC insurance in order to claim your wages from the company which has provided you your MLC insurance. What is encouraging is now port state controls have become very active, very proactive. Sometimes the sailors feel that the port state control is overactive, and they do not, they're not very favorable to MLC inspections. But then please understand that if you do not cooperate, please do not expect a protection under MLC. You have to cooperate it because the port state is doing its job only to ensure that the rights which are guaranteed to the seafarers under MLC are actually enforced by the flag state. So I've written there, mentioned there in bold red letters that an atmosphere where protection of MLC is denied to all seafarers. Do we want that kind of an atmosphere? No, we don't want. And hence, it is important that all seafarers also contribute towards these port state inspections to make their own lives better. Now, impact of Maritime Labour Convention is most discernible. These are some cases which have happened because of COVID. There were two vessels, Conti, Stockholm, and Ben Reens. These are very recent cases where the ship's crew had overpassed their contractual period, and they stopped the ship for indefinite period, stating that if they are not relieved, they will not let the ship sail. These are two very, very recent cases where the ships were stopped in Australia, and these seafarers were over the contractual period, and they had a right under the Maritime Labour Convention to be returned home. I have told you in the beginning that a seafarer must be repatriated before he completes 12 months. So they have the right under MLC to return home and at the expense of the employer. Now, the Conti Stockholm was also boarded by a member of Australian Federal Opposition leader, Senator Glenn Sterle, who gave his support along with the ITF for timely relief of the crew of these two ships. Another incident which happened very recently was when the master of a vessel called China Dawn diverted the vessel towards a port in Kochi, India, requesting for relief of his crew. He said that under the clause which we have already talked about, which came in force in 2019 about harassment and bullying, he said that his people on board are being mentally harassed. They need to be relieved well in time, and he diverted the ship. And he said, along with me, 9 other crew members need to be signed off. In the second para, it says the master of the oil tanker cited mental exhaustion he and his crew faced due to extra time spent at sea because of travel restrictions all around the world where they could not sign off, and thanks to the deadly coronavirus. We can't really blame At this stage, it would be right to inform, to discuss with everybody that we can't blame the ship owners or we can't blame the governments for the situation. It has come suddenly. It has caught everybody unprepared. But believe me, people ashore are working overtime to make sure that the sailors, the seafarers do come home and people who are at home do go on the ship. Mr. Guy Ryder, who is the Director General of ILO, has commented that forcing exhausted seafarers to continue working for more than 4 months beyond the end of their contract is unacceptable. This not only jeopardizes their health, endangers maritime safety. We call on the governments to work together to make these crew changes happen quickly and safely. Even ITF, International Transport Workers Federation, has gone to the extent of commenting that it will now support ship's crew rights. You can imagine how serious this problem is, and the people are working overtime. They're doing all their best to bring seafarers home. As per IMO's figures, close to 200,000 people have already been home, but that is not enough. We still have about 600,000 people, seafarers, still either ashore or on board to sign off or join the vessel. Like I said, IMO has been very consistent on its request and appeal to everybody to make sure that they are equally involved in making MLC a success. This is the master's role I have mentioned here. What is master's role? He must, in order to make MLC a success, one needs to understand that MLC is an international convention. It's very important that all seafarers understand this. That is a convention which does not apply directly to the ship owners or the seafarers. But this is the beauty of MLC, that it does not apply directly to the ship owners or the seafarers, but it rather imposes obligation on the countries, the member countries, to enforce it. So MLC is an international convention which does not apply directly to ship owners, seafarers, but rather places an obligation on the countries which have ratified the convention to implement it through their national laws. Some of the responsibilities of master when he's on board: proper medical care, STCW certification, make sure that people are aware of their rights, make sure that they're aware of their financial securities. And at the bottom, once again, the hot topic of present days is that in present COVID times, where relief is a little difficult, it's important for the master to keep the morale of the ship's crew high at all times. I know it is difficult, but then that is what the master is for. Everybody looks up to him, so he should ensure that, please. There are some impacts of labor convention. Because of that, ILO has created, in the second para, in the bold letters, IMO has created a seafarer crisis action team called Capt. Every seafarer has got the right to call them, visit their website, or send an email. The website is mentioned in blue. Email is mentioned in bold letters at the bottom. A lot of companies have created helpline, 24 hours helpline, where seafarers either ashore or on board can contact them for any kind of problem. It does not matter what the problem, whether it is a family problem or problem on board or mental harassment, it does not matter. Everybody have joined hands, everybody has joined ranks together in trying to help the seafarer in all the problems which a seafarer might encounter. Because we all realize that seafarers are doing a tremendous and a remarkable job right now, and they need all the help possible. This is, it's a little not visible here, but this is a very recent one, 11th of September 2020, where IMO, ILO, UNCTAD, International Chamber of Shipping, all these organizations have got together and made a representation to IMO that seafarers should be granted key workers status so that it becomes very easy for them to be relieved. Then they will have special regulations that the government makes the work of the government easier and they lift a certain kind of sanctions and permit the sign off and sign on of the crew members. So this is a very recent development which has happened on 11th of September, just a few days back. Now, I've given a list of few international bodies where the seafarers can approach directly for any kind of help if they wish. And that brings to the end of my presentation. David, could you take over now, please, if there are any questions?
Yes, Captain Kapoor, thank you very much, sir. That was certainly a very full presentation. Let me just... So just to reiterate, that a copy of those slides is available as a download. I recognize there's a lot of information there, so if you want to capture it, feel free to download. And of course, a recording will be available probably for about tomorrow. So, Captain Kapoor, we've got lots of questions coming in. Let's see where to start. Rajenda asks about a case of a ship abandoned by owners in Fujairah. The authorities are not permitting the crew to disembark, no wages, also running out of provisions in stores. What options are available to the crew, and how will MLC 2006 support them?
Well, that's great, Rajan. That was a question which is very much prevalent in present times. Like I already mentioned during the presentation, that now a seafarer can directly approach the MLC, the insurance company which has provided MLC to them, provided the insurance is still alive. That means the insurance normally expires on 20th of February of the next year. If it is still alive, then one does not have to wait for approaching the ship owner. He can approach the MLC directly, ask them to have them relieved. But please understand, the definition is, if you're not paid for 2 months, it is an automatic abandonment under law. But the insurance company will cover you only for 4 months of wages and not beyond that. So as soon as the 2-month period finishes, approach the MLC, because if it crosses 4 months, if you stay on the ship for 6 months or 8 months, you'll still be paid for only 4 months. And if the MLC insurance has expired, then the best is to approach the organizations which I've given on the last slide. Approach your union, approach your government, approach the flag state. I am sure they will be more than willing to help you.
Thank you very much. And while the audience are listening to this, you may wonder why there's a jumble of words on your screen. That's just a little poll asking you what your thoughts are. And it's very interesting. It's still open. If you go to menti.com and type in that numeric code 3022564, you'll be invited to enter any number of words that you want to vote and appear there. But it's very interesting. Captain Kapoor, can you see that screen?
Yeah, I can see that, David, and it's really very encouraging that amongst the poll which you have, which people have voted for, the one which is in the biggest vote, the word which has got is security. And people who have all voted for security is absolutely right, because MLC does in fact provide a huge security to the seafarers. And the second word is which has got the maximum number of votes is protection. And they're absolutely right. In fact, no, not protection, rights. Yes, you're right. MLC does protect the rights.
It keeps changing.
Yeah. Because it keeps changing. The people are voting now. So right is now in the second place, the rights, and protection is on the third place. So security, once again, is absolutely correct. It's very encouraging that people in the audience are well aware of their rights under MLC. It's beautiful. We have a very, very well-educated audience with us.
And it's interesting. I was watching a presentation the other day with the Secretary General of the ILO, and he was actually saying that the MLC is an envy of many other industries and other organizations because the tripartite way that it was agreed was quite revolutionary. Can you talk a little bit about that tripartite way of the MLC was put together?
Yes, in fact, that's the beauty of MLC. Rather, I would say it's one of the very few agreements which are tripartite. One part is the ILO themselves, the other part is the governments, and the third part is the unions who represent the seafarers. So everybody involved, every stakeholder in the shipping industry is a part of this fantastic agreement which has come out. And ILO now also has a committee to look after the welfare of seafarers. The beauty of this committee is that it has representatives from all these three bodies. That means there are 2 representatives from ILO, 2 from the government, and 2 from the unions. So the committee is very well represented by every entity which was part of this tripartite agreement, and that's why this MLC is considered to be a revolutionary development for the betterment of seafarers.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's very interesting. Now, obviously, in these COVID times, and you touched on it very, very well, is a lot of mariners are going over the 12 months, unable to get off the ship. Is MLC being violated, or is there some elasticity or procedures for allowing that to happen?
Well, yes, we cannot say violated, but yes, the requirements under MLC is being breached. Violation would mean that somebody has done it on purpose, but I don't think anybody is doing on purpose. This COVID thing has come as a surprise to everybody. The governments are ill prepared. The seafarers were not prepared. The companies, the management companies, the ship owners were not prepared. It has come as a surprise. The world is still trying to pull themselves up to this onslaught of COVID. So one cannot say it's a violation, but yes, it has been breached. And believe me, seafarers are contributing remarkably, beautifully. We are all very, very, very grateful to them for what they are doing. I have been involved in a couple of cases here. The people are doing beautifully on the ship. And there are some who are saying that, yes, we are aware that there are travel restrictions imposed by the government, but we can't blame the governments for that. They need to protect their own citizens, and that is why I posted it on the last slide, where all the international bodies, some 7-8 of them, have approached United Nations, and we expect that UNO will very soon declare them as key workers, making it easy for everybody to come home or join their ships. I've also been involved in a company where they have worked I know they are working on Saturdays, Sundays overtime to ensure people come home. There are charter flights being arranged. So people are making efforts. And yes, our sympathies are very much with the seafarers. Once again, I would like to salute them and thank them for the remarkable job that they're doing.
Thank you, sir. We have a question here from Zubair. He says, as a master, prior to joining a vessel, how can the master protect against criminalization? Are there any lawyers that can be hired prior to joining?
Well, there are various types of criminalization, David. Mr. Zubair, thank you very much for asking that. Yes, I do get a lot of cases, but criminalizations are of different types. Depends on what kind of a criminalization, whether it is coverage for wages, recovery of wages, whether it is untimely relief, whether it is not providing enough facilities as per MLC. We have to see specifically what kind of a criminalization is that. There have been a number of cases where we were involved, like UNCLOS under Article 230. UNCLOS is a law which governs all the sailors, all the governments, all the coastal states. Under Article 230, very clearly, very specifically, states that in case there is a pollution, only monetary penalty can be imposed on the people, on a seafarer, which implies that you cannot arrest a seafarer. Only monetary penalties can be imposed. But then that is hardly ever followed. There are various cases where the first thing which affected country does is imprison the master. So yes, there is a lot of criminalization. I've written a couple of articles. I've been personally involved with them. Yes, that is true. We just hope that UNCLOS is followed by to the letter and spirit by the governments who have ratified, who are part of the UNCLOS.
Thanks. There are a number of questions coming in about ratification. There are obviously some governments who have still not ratified MLC. Why might that be? And what are the rights of the seafarers who are either sailing on ships registered in those countries or ships that are in that country's ports?
Yes. Now, MLC is very flexible on that. If you go into the articles, the MLC is actually divided into three parts. Part one gives a couple of articles which give general rules, and part two gives rules and guidelines. So in the part one, which gives various articles giving general guidelines, MLC is very flexible. It says that you must ratify. As of about 6 months back, close to 90 countries have already ratified. The others who have not ratified, MLC gives them flexibility that yes, you may not ratify MLC, but you must have certain guidelines or domestic laws which protect the seafarers. That permission is there, that flexibility is there. That is the beauty of MLC. That is why it has been so widely accepted. So yes, you must have domestic laws. And another problem which I discussed right in the beginning was level playing field, which says that if a seafarer works on a ship where the flag state of the country, the member state, has not ratified, that ship has to travel to all over the world. So when it reaches a port or a country where MLC has been ratified, then that ship will still have to follow the regulations of MLC. So whether you ratify or you don't ratify, if you're an international or a global or a ship which visits globally, then somewhere during the life of the ship, you will land up in a country which is ratified, and hence you have to follow the MLC regulations. You can't escape it. It's not possible.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, we have quite a few questions about Regulation 4.5. This one in particular is from Daniel. He says, what about Regulation 4.5, Social Security? When will this standard become mandatory?
Social Security is there to a certain extent now. If one has to go through this collective bargaining agreement, what the seafarers normally sign is called a seaman's or a seafarer's employment agreement. And by reference, they mention that which collective bargaining agreement does the seafarer's employment agreement come under. So a seafarer, whenever he signs an agreement, the employment agreement, he should actually refer to which collective bargaining agreement is governed, his employment agreement is governed, and refer back to the collective bargaining agreement, and there he will get a whole list of Social Security which is already provided. Gradually, it's going to increase. The latest amendment, which is coming into December 2020, is already, by the way, it's already ratified by nearly 34% of the people who have already ratified MLC. 34% of those member states have already ratified this amendment, which is coming in December 2020. So the number of Social Security is also going to increase there. I would ask him to refer to those amendments. They are available online. We have a shortage of time, so I can't list all of them here. But he will find that the Social Security numbers have increased there, which will come into force around December 2020.
Okay, thank you very much. We got a question here from Mohammed about maritime liens, and he says, can a master claim a maritime lien to compensate unpaid wages?
Yes, well, that goes into the legal thing. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. That was a legal question. Yes, you're absolutely right. But we need to know what is maritime lien. Maritime lien is a very special lien which is available only in the shipping industry. It's not available in any other industry. A maritime lien is one of the most powerful liens available to in the shipping industry. There are only 4 or 5 claims. There are about 10, 15, 20 claims. Only 4 or 5 of them attract maritime lien. And that also, there is a priority of which maritime lien is placed higher than the other liens. And the one which is right on the top, the most powerful maritime lien is recovery for non-payment of wages of master and the crew. Yes, the master has the right to enforce maritime lien. The procedure for enforcing maritime lien is that he has to approach the court, and nowadays the courts are very, very assisting and helpful. All he has to do is give a handwritten paper with the proof that his wages are not being paid for a certain such time, and the court will immediately grant him grant the ship an arrest warrant, and also say that henceforth the master and the crew have got a maritime lien over the ship. It's a lien now that you've asked this legal question. It's a lien which is called in rem, in rem, rem. That means in the property. That means in the ship which has given rise to this lien. So you have the full right under maritime lien to arrest that ship till your wages are paid. Yes, it is possible for the master to do that. Yes.
Thank you very much. We have another question here from Shishil. He says, if a seafarer leaves a ship due to non-payment for a prolonged period, it might be construed as desertion, which has adverse implications. How can he guard against this?
David, can I request you to please repeat that? It broke off.
Sure. If a seafarer leaves a ship due to non-payment for a prolonged period, it might be construed as desertion, which has adverse implications. How can a seafarer guard against this?
When a seafarer, thank you for this question. Yes, a lot of people have this doubt. Please understand that whenever you join a ship, you sign the articles of agreement. When you sign the articles of agreement, it's very categorically and specifically mentioned in the first few pages of the article that you will ensure and make all possible efforts to guard and save your ship from any possible or probable danger. So there is something known as safe manning. If a ship has less than the safe manning, then the ship is in danger. So initially you have signed an agreement, an article of agreement, and by leaving without a replacement, you are actually endangering that ship. Now you might leave because of non-payment of wages, but then legally you have already signed that you will stay on the ship for the safety of the ship. Yes, you can leave if the replacement is there, if the ship owner has permitted it. Otherwise, legally, under law, no. But if you wish to leave, approach the court, take their permission and leave. Don't just walk off the ship. That is called desertion. And desertion is not a very welcome sign in the shipping industry.
Thank you very much. I note that we are getting a little bit tight on time, so I will have to wrap things up. I know I've been told by numerous people that they have other meetings to go to, but there are a number of questions on training. Is training in MLC required, and if not, where should it be?
Yes, MLC does. It does not say that it is mandatory, but yes, it does give guidelines for the training. It has given various guidelines under MLC about what kind of a training is required. Like, I'll give you a very simple example of a chief cook. If they say that should a chief cook should be a trained chief cook, MLC is very flexible on that and says that whichever is the member state can devise and or design what type of training which a chief cook should get. For others, the officers, there is STCW, which governs their training, and MLC is very flexible on that. That yes, let the member states decide on the STCW training. MLC by itself does not make it mandatory that you must give only this training or that training, or does not specify the actual face of the training, what it should be. It leaves it to the government, where STCW is one of the pillars, and there's enough rules and regulations given under STCW.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to have to wrap things up. So I will wrap things up now. We're approaching an hour. Captain Kapoor, thank you ever so much. There are some outstanding questions which we will try to get to if time permits. But in the meantime, you have my contact details and Captain Kapoor's details if you want to get in touch. Like I said, in the next couple minutes, if you want to download the presentation, and the recording will be available. I can't stress enough that the Nautical Institute, we are a membership organization. Captain Kapoor is a member, I'm a member, and if you would like to be involved in this conversation, if you would like to be involved in the work that we do, if you would like us to help you stay educated, please join us. You can go to the website and it'll tell you how to join. So on that note, I will say thank you very much for attending. I will remind you that in a few hours you will get a thank you email with a certificate. So enjoy that if you will, and I will sign off. So Captain Kapoor, I will invite you to log off, and then I will close the system. So,
thank you very much to everybody. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Thank you, sir.